Hello, good evening. I hope that you're doing well today. I'm not sure if I've ever done this before in a video, but I'm going to lead with, hey, if you've been to the channel before and you remotely enjoy it at all, give me a like. If you really enjoy it, give me a subscribe. I I only post videos on Saturdays and Sundays right now because during the week I'm just too busy. I got a lot going on, but yeah, usually on the weekends is whenever I try and load up and post some videos for fun. I usually post videos for my Stars Without Number campaign, our Dungeons and Dragons 5e campaign, and also for drawing. I really enjoy drawing as well. So it's more of a way for me to kind of get my head wrapped around all the different things that are going on in my life, as well as gives me an excuse to do some drawing, do some brainstorming for tabletop role playing, all that good stuff. So, okay, so where we left off with the last campaign recap from Stars Without Number, the players had actually went onto an abandoned space station to try to figure out some stuff about what had went on since the scream. And basically what they had found was once they had the power back on and they were able to bring the hack into the computer on the space station, they started to get a little bit of a timeline of how things happened on the space station and how New Rhea responded following the scream. So, immediately following the scream, things on New Rhea didn't immediately change. However, after a few weeks of not being able to communicate with any of the outside other worlds, especially the home worlds, the government on New Rhea took heavy actions against to try and basically solidify control over the planet. Panic was starting to spread throughout the planet because all of a sudden there was no way to communicate with anyone else in the universe. New Rhea itself is not very hospitable. It takes specific types of breathing apparatuses and things like this to stay alive in New Rhea, and unfortunately, some of the resources used to build and manufacture those respirators come from off-world. So, well, not immediately, but after a couple of weeks, the idea of running out of tools to breathe with began to absolutely terrify the people of New Rhea. And so the government started taking full control. They started rationing respirators and the respirator charges, things like this. So all this was going on down on the planet, but up on the space station where the players are reading this history from, the space station itself was sort of isolated because now the people on the planet were not so worried about what was going on this space station as they were worried about what's going on the planet. And any sort of space missions to come and get the people off of this space station were grounded. The people the researchers on this space station reached out multiple times to the people of New Rhea and the communications groups, which still did attempt essentially daily to try and get in contact with people outside of the system. They tried the people on this space station. They begged the people of New Rhea to send some ship to get them off of this space station because there was only limited resources. But no help was coming, and so the history that the players are reading now is really just a doomed history of these people on the space station. And so the people on the space station were getting daily news from the planet. So they knew of all the horrors that were happening on the planet, as well as they had this constant reminder that their time was up eventually, was going to be up eventually. Needless to say, they did at least log all of the history in the event that someday someone would come. And within the computer, they told about how the government cracked down on the residents of New Raya. Eventually, the resources started to dry up. But in parallel, the government had actually expedited some drastic research projects. One was the idea of modifying the human genome to make it to where they could breathe the atmosphere of New Raya. It was not readily it was not made available. The information was not made available to the players as to whether or not they were successful, because the people that were on the space station eventually starved, because after quite a few months they were not able to get any new supplies, and so they eventually starved. And so then the information flow, the information logging, the information related to the planet came to a halt as well. So the players then continued to explore the space station a little bit. They shut down the wing, the one wing which had the apartments in it, that the people that worked, the researchers worked and lived in. I can't remember if I spoke about it in the previous video or not, but they also took samples of the red moss that they had found, and they decided they would take those back with them to be studied. Interesting enough is if the players had actually explored the apartment wing instead of just locking it off, they would have found some interesting stuff, but they didn't. So part of being a DM is that you prepare all this neat stuff and half of it never comes to light. But that is the job of the DM. The reason that the players locked off the apartment wing was because it actually had a huge gaping hole on one at the very end of the wing, from where it looks like an asteroid had hit it. So the players were trying to isolate that wing so that there was no chance that somebody accidentally fell out into space. So lastly, the wing that they decided to explore was the exercise and kitchen wing. Whenever they started exploring this area, as they stepped into the wing, there was a beeping noise, and they triggered an alarm. And from the wall, a floating drone came out, and it had like some sort of a stun cannon on it, right? And so the players immediately jump into action. They realize that this thing is hostile because there's red lights blinking all over it. And yeah, the first one to charge in was none other than Roldy Jenkins. Roldy charges forward, and as he's charging, if you will recall, because they're in 0G, it makes their ability to move much more difficult. So I say Roldy charged into combat, but in reality, he kind of did like a weird foot shuffle across the floor, so that his grav boots would still keep hold on the floor as he was trying to shuffle quickly. He drew his sword, and he continued to charge. As this was going on, Justin Moses produced his laser pistol, took a shot, missed, unfortunately. Drew Rigner, at this point, he used his psionic abilities to summon a psionic laser rifle, and he takes aim with his psionic laser rifle, takes a shot at the drone, and hits it. The drone's spitting and sputtering. It's got sparks flying from it, but it still is in combat. It still is functioning. It flies forward and takes a shot at Roldy with its stun gun. It hits, does a small amount of damage to Roldy, but he's still able to keep consciousness. And so then Roldy swings his sword and just cleaves the drone in half. And that kind of brings the combat encounter to an end. They continue to explore the kitchen and dining area. Unfortunately, they don't really find much. Just a few knickknacks, like there was a calendar, an interesting looking calendar that they'd found, but none of them really wanted to take that with them. They found some credits, some tools, some salvageable metal. So they did at least gather the salvageable metal that they would take back with them to the ship, especially because within the ship there are the facilities to be able to smelt metal for repairs on the ship as well. And there is like a very basic machine shop on the ship, so they would want to, take the metal with them so that they could maybe potentially use it in the event that they took some damage or something like this. They found a strange clock on the wall. I believe that, if I recall correctly, that Roldy actually took the clock off the wall. Anyhow, as this is going on, they're kind of realizing that they've explored all of the space station. They get a call over the radio, and it's Hyphen. Hyphen is calling them to let them know that Bravo team is on the planet's surface, but they have not been able to contact them in at least 15 minutes. And so they're getting no information feedback from the team. And not only that, but the readings from their, at least as far as their life force readings, they're not getting any from their suits. So either the team is dead or they've been captured and stripped. So now the captain calls on Alpha Team, which is the players' team, to return to the ship, restock, resupply, and head down to the planet surface. So the players, they get on their shuttle, they fly back to the main ship. Once they get to the ship, my cousin joins in with our gaming session. My cousin is playing Earl Booker. He wasn't able to make the initial play session, so Earl joins in on our play about this time, and it's very fortunate because they are about to head planetside, where it's extremely dangerous. Actually, they don't know this yet, so they hand over the scrap, they hand over the red moss, and they're able to kind of they're hoping that there can be research done on the red moss to see what kind of characteristics it has. They also receive some stim packs, and so stim packs for me, I kind of use like I think it's Fallout. I think that has stim packs maybe, or if you've ever played the game Rust, I think they have stim packs. Either way, it's sort of like a shot of adrenaline with some healing properties. It's kind of like a futuristic healing potion is essentially what it is. And yeah, then they strap in and refuel the shuttle and head to the planet. They approach the area where Bravo team has landed. They do a flyby to look for any signs of life. They don't see any weapons, armor. They don't see any humans. They don't see any bodies, anything like that. So they come in, they go ahead and sit down and disembark. And then the command comes through Hyphen from the captain that the players should be traveling to a major communication hub that is about a 3 hours walk from them. So the players specifically, one critical resource that they have to track through all this is, because New Rhea is an inhospitable planet to some degree, they have to keep an eye on their oxygen tanks and their respirator tanks. So anytime that we're playing and we're on a planet that is inhospitable, I'll kind of let them know, okay, 30 minutes passes by, an hour passes by, and from this, the players are tracking their oxygen levels or their oxygen tank resources, things like this. So it's all sort of it kind of ratchets up the whole, I guess, anxiety level of the players, and it adds another layer of as part of their decision making. They don't have an unlimited amount of time to do all this exploring. They have to be cognizant of what their mission is and what their goals are, because they have a very limited amount of time. So the captain sends them to the communication hub, and so the players, they start traipsing through the woods, and they start their long hike through the woods. They've still seen no sign of the Bravo team. As they're walking through the woods, about an hour and a half into their journey, they run into some very creepy-looking critters, and these critters attempt to attack them. They almost look like rats, actually. But interesting enough, Earl Booker charges in. He slays one immediately, and the other players are able to, I think between the other 3 players, they're able to down one of these rat-type creatures, and then Earl Booker slays the third one and kills the last one. And so he kind of gets the nickname almost immediately, the Rat Killer, the Rat Slayer. But yeah, the players continue on. As they're walking, I think it was about 30 minutes prior to them arriving at the information hub, at the communication hub, they hear some very heavy footsteps off in the distance. That's really all they were able to hear. But they continue on. They're trying to be alert, things like this. And interesting enough, Justin Moses has the ability, has the foci alert. And so as the players arrive at the communication hub, they look out across this field from this. They're kind of like in the tree line right now, kind of hiding, and they see the communication hub, and it's built into the side of this big mountain, and the entrance is it's about maybe like 300, 400 feet out in front of them across this field. They're looking around for any danger. They don't really see anything. They don't see any signs of Bravo team, and they're kind of talking amongst themselves what they should do, when Justin Moses, with his alert foci, is able to recognize that something big is sneaking up on them from behind. And so he turns around and he looks and sees, and essentially what he sees is a Rancor. It's from Star Wars, is kind of the description that I gave the players. And it is, now that it realizes that its element of surprise is no longer with it, it starts charging at the players. Well, the other players, they haven't even realized that this has happened yet, but all they see is Justin Moses just start running across the field, and the other characters, they're like looking between each other, like what's going on, and then they look back and they see that this creature is catching up. And so we essentially started a chase scene, and they decided to run. They did not want to fight this gigantic creature, and they start running across this field. And the way that I did the chase scene is essentially it's the players, the characters, the player characters could fail 2 rolls, I guess, competing rolls before the Rancor caught up to them. Okay, so essentially what I had them do is I had them roll a d20 plus their dexterity modifier plus their exert skill, and from that I also had the Rancor roll against them. And as they were running, interesting enough, the only player character that fell behind enough to get caught by the Rancor was Justin Moses, despite the fact that he was the first one to spot the thing and kind of got a little bit of a head start. So as the player characters are approaching the communication hub, there's essentially like a big overhang that allows that's kind of would be able to block the Rancor if the players can make it to it. And so they're running, they're drawing closer and closer, and then right as the player characters are about to pass into the overhang, the Rancor catches up with Justin Moses, and it essentially triggers an initiative because combat is imminent. And so I have Justin Mosey's roll, I have the Rancor roll. The other players, they say they don't want any part of this. They want to get to the overhang. So it just so happens that Justin Mosey's rolls, and because of his alert foci as well, he actually gets an additional roll on his initiative. And so he rolls below the Rancor the first time and rolls above on the second time. And so he's able to, for his turn, he flees the combat and is able to barely get under the overhang just in time as the Rancor kind of like slides in and is like swiping at his heels and can't quite reach him, but he can't get into the overhang anymore. And so the players finally make it to the communication hub, and they watch as the Rancor kind of like is roaring and growling and scratching, trying to get under, but he can't. And so finally the Rancor gives up, and he kind of trots off back across the field into the tree line. And that sort of, that's where we're actually going to stop this episode. And we'll pick back up probably next week with the next little bit. The players will be exploring the communication hub and dealing with the horrors that may or may not be waiting for them inside. I hope that you guys enjoyed the recap, and I guess we'll see you again. Thanks.